Hello and welcome to another edition of BrightGage's User Showcase webinars, our monthly series highlighting all of the great work done by our partners. Today, we'll be showcasing how to build off your daily metrics, and we'll be chatting with Josh Smith and Harrison Teel of Systems Solutions. I'm Ashley Nicely, a member of the Partner Success team and your host today. Feel free to reach out throughout the webinar with any questions you may have. I'll do my best to answer them through the chat, or I will interject to ask our speakers directly. We'll also make some time for Q&A at the end. So I'd like to take a moment to personally welcome our speakers, Josh Smith, the Director of Support Services, and Harrison Teel, the NOC Manager at Systems Solutions. I do have them both on mute at the moment, but they'll be introducing themselves in just a few minutes here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today, Josh and Harrison. We're thrilled to have you. I'd like to take a moment to talk about what's planned for today. As always, we like to start with a little review of what's new in BrightGage. Then I'll pass things over to Josh and Harrison for a more formal introduction from them. Next, they will walk you through Manage to Zero and Manage to Green dashboards that they've customized for different internal teams. After that, Josh and Harrison will review their dashboards for co-managed and client relationships, and even for an in-house account manager type role. Then they will review dashboards specific to their service team, highlighting metrics to keep an eye on for both remote and in-office work environments. Lastly, they'll talk about bringing in custom data, highlighting a Sentinel-1 dashboard. And then, as mentioned, we'll save some room in the end for further Q&A. All right, let's jump right into it. So what's new in BrightGage? No big changes from last month's webinar for those who tuned in, so we'll go through these pretty quickly. We recently allowed analyst users to have access to report templates. If you're not familiar with analyst users, they're essentially admin users, but they have reduced rights. While analysts have the ability to create their own report templates, now admins can choose to share theirs with the analyst as well. We've also created a manual email write-in option for report recipients. This means you can send reports to anyone, even if they're not registered as a user or client recipient in your account. Okay, our agent update. For those who are on-premise, definitely tune in now. We've released a new agent for all on-premise data sources. To quickly mention with this one, if you are using on-premise data sources, you will be required to switch over to this new version in the near future. So I'd like to touch on why this update is being required. The performance of the old agent architecture has progressively become worse as partners continue to scale and process more data. So, in order to provide a better experience, we have replaced the old version with a new architecture that incorporates a heartbeat service for checking in with the agent. So, this new version 5 is also easier to install with an updated interface to facilitate setting up multiple agents at once. In short, expected to provide an improved experience from start to finish. If you haven't updated or you need more information or help, reach out to Success or even our support team, support@brightgage.com. Okay, new integration. We released a new integration to Cisco Meraki. The integration comes with 3 out-of-the-box dashboards and reports, device statistics, monitoring, and network stats. I do have one up here as a demonstration or example. So if you're interested in adding this to your data source stack, reach out to your sales or success rep so we could get you going there. New dashboard of the month. So I'd like to share here that we have an ongoing dashboard or report of the month page. On this page, we share templates of what other partners have created within their BrightGage account. We also create dashboards and report templates that highlight these user showcase webinars like today's. So last month, we released a client heartbeat report template. This template was inspired by the May user showcase webinar with CPI Solutions, and it provides a review of team performance and client feedback. And really, it's meant to drive discussion based on survey responses, the response speed and efficiency of your team, and the level of communication that you're providing to your clients. So, if you are looking for a little KPI inspiration, I do recommend checking out this page as we add on to it monthly. You can either bookmark the page and check in periodically or subscribe to our blog, and you'll get notified every time that a new template is available. Coming soon on the roadmap, as mentioned last month, we do have a single sign-on option that's going to be available soon in the coming months. We'll first start off with a ConnectWise, with the ConnectWise Bright Gauge folders, and then we'll expand from there. So if you would like to discuss any of these items in more detail, go over the dashboard of the month templates, or if you have any questions whatsoever, you can reach out to our team directly at success@brightgauge.com. I will post in just a few moments a link to the templates page, just looking at some of the questions already coming in. And also the Success at Bright Gauge email is already in your chat section there. I'll also be sending out a survey post-webinar, so we can get in touch that way as well. Always like to mention today's webinar recording will be shared with you via email within the next few business days. We'll also upload it to that webinar page where you can find all of our past user showcase webinars. That's at brightgauge.com/webinars. All right, it's at this point that I would like to invite Josh and Harrison to take over, introduce themselves, and share all of the ways that they're utilizing Bright Gauge at System Solutions.
All right. So again, my name's Josh Smith. I'm with System Solutions. Thanks to Ashley and Bright Gauge for letting us present today and kind of share some things that we found useful over the years that hopefully somebody else can get some benefit from. So I'll give a little bit of background both on myself and our organization, and then I'll let Harrison give some details on his background. And then we'll focus more on how we've used Bright Gauge over the years and how we've kind of come to rely on it and some of the things that have made a big difference for us. So System Solutions is a managed services provider in the traditional sense. We're located in Paducah, Kentucky, which you would call like a tertiary market. And we've got around 32 employees right now. The company was actually founded in 1985 as a Computerland franchise, if anybody goes back that far. And it was mostly a retail storefront. They resold IBM hardware and those kind of things, and really just focused on business to business sales, but they did offer some like residential sales to people who were buying PCs and things like that in the late 80s. And then in 1992, we were purchased by the current owner, who's still with us today as our CEO. And he kind of started driving the company to more of a commercial only, more of a proactive type sales organization. And we focused really just in the Paducah, Kentucky area. And then in the mid to late 2000s, we started to pivot to more of a service organization than a sales organization. Our name was changed formally, actually, I think about 94. But since those mid 2000s, our core business has been managed services and focusing on recurring revenue and establishing long-term client benefits and relationships. And then we've just been working on growing that side of the business. There's other things we do. We do some physical security. We're an ISP, like a lot of MSPs are. But really, the managed services and the recurring revenue for our clients is our primary focus. We will serve pretty much any industry. The majority of our client base is in the healthcare vertical. We do a lot of regional or critical access rural hospitals. We do a lot of private physicians' offices and dentist offices and those kind of businesses. So that's kind of a snowball effect for us as we, have more experience with those industries and can speak more authoritatively on things like compliance and security for those specific organizations. That's been very beneficial for us. And we're lucky to exist in a market where there is a lot of healthcare need for technology in this area, and a lot of organizations that aren't quite large enough to have a fully staffed IT department. So it's the market has been beneficial for us. We have about 5,000 agents in our RMM out there that we service. So that's probably roughly close to the amount of users that we provide service to as well. And our typical client ranges from 10 client or 10 employees, sometimes all the way up to 3, 4, 500 employees. That's kind of the space we play in. Our sweet spot is 50 users, that kind of thing. That's probably our average size customer. So we do have a few clients, probably 10 or so, that we would consider co-managed. So they have, their own internal IT staff, at least a person or two. So this is my 11th year at System Solutions. I started as a field tech back in early 2011. And have been kind of increasing in responsibility since. I was a service team lead for a while after that, for about 7 years. And then in 2018, I moved to my current role as Director of Support Services. I oversee about 22 staff, not all directly, thankfully. And then I'm a member of the organization's leadership team since 2018 as well, to help overall company strategy and those kind of things. I also have some responsibilities over other departments. I oversee our account managers, and then I'll work on policies and procedures for pretty much anybody. My background has been mostly technical throughout my entire career. I've only worked 2 places in those years, but they have all been technical roles until recently, when I'm kind of pivoting to more of a management role. So I'll let Harrison give a little bit of background on him. He's our NOC manager. So Harrison.
Yeah, I'm Harrison Teel. I'm the NOC manager, like Josh said. I've been with System Solutions for 5 years now. My background is in development, so they originally brought me in to manage and develop the tool stack, like the RMM, and focus on automation and things like that. I also manage the team that deploys traditional services, your backup patching, as well as the push into security services, as everybody's doing these days. And then just over the years, my role keeps expanding, and I primarily focus on a lot of process improvement type tasks now.
All right. So,
Quick question.
go ahead.
Can you put this into presentation mode now that we're going to get into the dashboards? I think on the very bottom, you should be able to, I think that one will do the trick.
Like screen.
Might be because you're in protected view, but a little bit easier to see. If possible. If not, I don't want to derail too much.
You're fine. I'll give it a shot here, and we'll see. It's just not letting me present that monitor. I don't think it's gonna work for me.
Okay. Yeah. Just checking in.
All right, sorry. All right. So our tech stack, there's a few items that I won't go over our full tech stack, but there are a few specific items that we pull most of our data from into BrightGauge. So our ConnectWise manages our RMM. We use SolarWinds and Central. ConnectWise manages our ticketing system and management app. N-Central is our RMM. We use StorageCraft for backups, and then AV. We mostly use Sentinel-1, but we also have some data from the integrated AP Defender that's in N-Central as well. And then we have a DNS filtering application that we deploy to clients that we also pull data from. So our BrightGauge history, we've been with BrightGauge since 2017. We used a different dashboard product that was never really fully developed or utilized. And it it was a garbage in, garbage out scenario. We weren't good at keeping our tickets up to date and our time entries clean and our R&M agents up to date and those kind of things. So it was really not very beneficial to us or our clients. And then in 2018, one of the things that I wanted to do when I stepped into this role was to do more of a focus, have more of a focus on processes and procedures and documentation so that we could deliver a more consistent experience to our clients. So the first year or so that we were using Brightgauge and that I was in this role, we were really just focusing on ticket data, cleaning up our ticketing procedures and working on bringing kind of that high level, quantity of tickets and tickets by status and those kind of really basic gauges into Brightgauge. And we started to see some of the benefit. So towards the end of 2018, we started focusing internally on initiatives to be more efficient, to be more consistent, to be more transparent to our clients. And we've leaned on Brightgauge to kind of be that single pane of glass that pulls all the pieces together. And we've had pretty good luck with it. So we did have some legacy processes that we did here that a lot of MSPs have to go through, timesheet and time entry review, ticket invoicing, agreement invoicing, all those kind of things that can be really time consuming. And those are some of the areas where we focused on efficiency. And the next screens, I'll get into the way that we did that using Brightgauge. So this is the managed to green and managed to zero. So this first dashboard, is our invoicing dashboard. It was created for our billing and logistics person. And the previous process was really time consuming, really monotonous. And it basically involved him reading every single time entry on every single ticket. Hopefully nobody judges me for that level of inefficiency. But it was one of the early things that we caught and we're like, hey, we could save a lot of time if there was a better way to do this. So we focused on moving towards a manage by exception principle rather than just we're going to blanket review everything strategy. So what we did for this dashboard was we met internally with our service management team who does most of our timesheet reviews. And we tried to figure out what are the most common mistakes that we have to request corrections for on timesheets. Because it's usually those errors in our organization that create invoices incorrectly. An overwhelming amount of the work we do is towards an agreement. We don't generate invoices for that. So our goal is to not send out invoices that shouldn't be sent out, and also to make sure we're invoicing on things that we should invoice for. So our process right now is that our techs go through their timesheet and they have a gauge similar to this that they use to work through. And then our invoicing person comes to this board. Usually there's only a handful of items in each gauge. And the goal is not necessarily that everything be zero. The goal is that anything that's a non-zero number is just something that needs review. So sometimes it's flagged and it's correct, and sometimes it's flagged and it's incorrect, but these are the most common issues that we found. So most of our agreements to go into the first gauge have a dedicated coverage hours. For us, sometimes we do 8 to 5, sometimes we do 7 to 7. It depends on the client and the need. So we highlighted tickets with time outside of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's not necessarily indicative of a problem because we do some after hours and on-call work and that kind of stuff. But an after hours entry for some clients may create an invoice and for others it may not. So that was one of the things that we wanted another set of eyes on. And then tickets with after hours work type on the next gauge is pretty much for the same purpose, but these are things that are marked after hours that will most likely generate an invoice that we want our team leads to review so that they know or at least have the opportunity to say, no, we shouldn't invoice for this. Or let's invoice it, but we need to change the billed hours or something like that. And on the next gauge, tickets without agreement, I mentioned that most of our work is done against agreements. We don't really do hardly any break fix. So an immediate red flag for us is a ticket without an agreement. And in the past, somebody would have had to have caught that. Otherwise, it would have automatically created an invoice during our invoicing period, and been sent out to the client. So one of the things we hate to have to do, is to issue credits against, erroneous invoices. So that was kind of a big thing for us to flag those. The next two gauges are a little more specific. They're a little more of an if-then style build. So the first one is tickets with regular time without travel to site. So regular time for us is what is our on-site work type. We do regular, remote, and travel are the three common work types. So this is basically saying you have a regular time entry and there's no preceding travel entry. So we do some defaults, agreement defaults in ConnectWise where, it will default the work type per the agreement. But we have some situations where we have, on-site staff stationed at clients and things of that nature. So we default those work types to regular. And then anytime anybody does a time entry remotely here from our office, they've got to be mindful to make sure they go in and set the right work type. So this is just to say, hey, were you actually on site without traveling there? How does this make sense? And then the next gauge is tickets with remote while on site. There is definitely a real scenario for this, and an accurate scenario. And, there are times when you take calls or something for another client. If you're at another client site and you step out to take the call. But typically, if you're on site, it should be a regular or an on-site work type. So tickets without remote, or tickets with remote while on site, is basically a remote entry that's sandwiched between travel entries. And the invoicing dashboard tickets for review, this was created at the request of our logistics person. This just flags any ticket that is on his invoicing dashboard in ConnectWise that has an internal note. So we'll use internal notes like most will for things like, hey, don't, only bill half this time, or please review to see if we should bill after hours rate, or those kind of things that the techs or the team leads will make as they're going through their time entries. And this just allows him to highlight those and only go to the tickets that have internal notes, rather than having to skim every ticket on his dashboard or his invoicing screen ConnectWise to find the ones with internal notes. So we previously, a little embarrassingly, were spending maybe 40 hours a month on invoicing by agreement invoicing and all of our other invoicing, and then also our break fix invoicing. And this cut that time down to about 10 hours a month. And that includes all the other agreement billings and things that we still do, but just kind of automating this process and making it more of a managed by exception scenario really saved us a lot of time. So the next dashboard we've got here is a time review dashboard. A lot of this expands on the previous invoicing dashboard. So the way that our time entry procedures work, we do real-time time entry. Our techs fill their timesheet as they go through their day and work tickets. ConnectWise is our ticketing system, ticketing documentation, those kind of things. It's also our timekeeping system. So it's important for us that it's pretty accurate, or that it's very accurate. And as the techs go through, every time a pay period comes to a close, the next day, the techs submit their timesheets. The team leads review them, and then they get approved and sent to HR, payroll, that kind of stuff. So previously, the team leads, when they had submitted timesheets from their subordinates, were having to go through and pretty much read every time entry for accuracy, to check the time, to look for things like is an agreement missing. Basically, we were trying to do everything we could to keep from putting too much work on our invoicing person. So we created this set of gauges for the techs to use. So each tech has their own gauge that is filtered for their timesheet, and their goal, what they're required to do, is to open this gauge this dashboard before they submit their timesheet, and make sure that anything that's a non-zero number is legitimately supposed to be a non-zero number. So TR is what you see is the prefix on all of these gauges that just stands for time review. And then again, this is for a specific tech in our organization. So we do real-time time entry, so we don't allow overlapping time entries. So that's what the first gauge there is meant to flag. Missing agreement, again, I'll say not always indicative of a problem, but it is something that at least needs some attention. And 9 times out of 10, it's somebody left the agreement off or it didn't default to the ticket or something like that. So that should almost always be 0 for us. Missing after hours flags anything outside of 8 to 5 that may need to be flagged for after hours billing. Travel as billable. This is a pretty specific thing to us. We always mark our travel do not bill. We don't itemize it on invoices or anything like that. We'll typically do more of a flat rate or something. And so because of that, we don't want them to show up on the invoices that are created automatically. So rather than somebody having to go in and change them all or check them all, we just have this gauge that anytime travel pops up as billable, the guys know to go in there and change it. So remote support while traveling, that coincides with one of the gauges on the previous dashboard. It just shows, hey, you traveled somewhere, but you had a remote entry after it before you had your return travel. And then regular missing travel is the same. It basically says, did you flag something as regular work type when we don't see a travel entry preceding it? And then I mentioned we do use ConnectWise ConnectWise for our time tracking, essentially kind of like a time clock. And everything is required to end in a quarter-hour increment. That's how our pay periods work, our compensation. So any day not ending in a quarter hour, we have to go in, and we use a wraparound time style time entry to average everything out at the end of the day. But this just says, hey, do you have any days on the current submitted timesheet that is not in a quarter-hour increment? And then days less than 8 hours. Sometimes somebody had to leave 15 minutes early to go to a doctor's appointment or a family function or something like that. And sometimes it's because they forgot to put the company holiday charge code on Memorial Day or something like that, for example. So this is just to draw attention and say, hey, you had a day less than 8 hours. What, was it intentional?
Hey, Josh, quick question for you. Once a ticket is reviewed for accuracy or correctness, how is it updated so that it falls off the board or drops down to 0 again?
Yeah. So it may, having it be 0 may not be the goal if it was entered correctly and it shows up on one of these gauges. But the way our time review works is the team lead will either reject the entry and send it back to the tech with a note that says, hey, here's what you need to fix. Or the team lead can also, if it's something really simple, like, hey, this was just missing an agreement, the team lead can go in there and add the agreement. And then, so on a gauge like missing agreement, this would drop back to 0 when he added that agreement and saved it. And then you'd have to sync the gauge again to see it in real time. But that's typically how that would work.
I'll just add that on the invoicing dashboard, that's only for open invoices. So once an invoice is closed, anything that was a true other than 0 number is going to drop off as well. And the same thing, it's only for open timesheets. So anything historic will drop off.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the next dashboard is our tech metrics dashboard. So this one, a few years ago, we introduced some gauges to do, or we introduced a program to incentivize on certain metrics. And we have, for our techs, we have a rotating list of metrics that we kind of add and take away from as we need to put focus on different areas. So the purpose of this was transparency. This is so that the techs know at anyone that they know what their goals are going into each quarter. This dashboard is so that they know where they stand in relation to that goal. So some of the metrics we use are CSAT. That's the first 2 gauges. That's just current and last quarter CSAT. We have a CSAT application, sends out a survey with all tickets like most people. and we just score our techs and send for them to be over our minimum and our recommended and our target thresholds and things like that. Time entry skew is the next two gauges. That's something that's a little more specific that we created, I think, in late 2019 or early last year. And we call it time entry skew. I don't know if there's a better name for it, but for us, all it is the amount of minutes that have elapsed between what is entered as the ending time on a time entry and what the audit trail reflects as to when that time entry was made. So the purpose is, I think it's pretty safe to say that a time entry will be its most accurate if it's done right when the work is completed. And previously we had an issue with, this has been years ago now, but we would have issues with people basically keeping a notebook with all their ticket notes. And then at the end of every day, they'd spend, 30 to 40 minutes entering all that time into ConnectWise. And so A, they're doing the work twice. B, it's much more likely that they'll make a mistake. And it's not going to be as fresh or as current information. So we want them to do those time entries right after. So this particular gauge shares 106 for the last quarter, 128 for the current quarter. They have a goal, but we like to see it within, an hour or two of entry. And then the next row down, stale tickets, is any ticket that hasn't been touched for 3 days. That's something that ConnectWise can flag tickets as stale. I think they've got some built-in reporting and things like that. And then BrightGauge also we have the ability to, through our ConnectWise data set, to say, any ticket last updated 3 days ago or more. And the techs have a goal number that they want to keep their stale tickets under. So the goal is that they're not letting tickets, just go to their queue to die, and that everything is getting addressed. Tickets older than 30 days average is pretty self-explanatory. It's not always possible to keep all tickets in your queue under 30 days old, but we want to make sure, similar to the last gauge, that every ticket in your queue is getting attention, even if it's something you're trying to, to back burner. And then the last two, time entry same day. This is kind of a piggyback on the time entry skew, just to make sure that people are going home every night with an up-to-date timesheet. So the next two gauges, the stale tickets current incentive period and the tickets older than 30 current incentive period per tech. These are just a pay period view or an incentive period view.
Yeah, it's a snapshot view by week of the previous stale ticket average and tickets older than 30 days. These were pre the snapshot gauges, so we could most likely change those.
Okay. And then on-time timesheet submissions, that's just are your timesheets later on time. And then the last two are utilization. We don't track billable time. We track utilization, which we essentially define as time spent towards a customer is utilized time, or something that we make them do. So company meetings, department meetings, those kind of things, we still count as utilized, even though they're probably technically not by the definition. But we don't want to, I'll say punish people. That's a little harsh. So,
Hey, John, what CSAT tool are you using, or what product are you using for that?
Currently we're using SimpleSat. We previously used Smileback, and we've done BrightGauge integration with both. We didn't really prefer the integration is pretty much the same for both, but we've been really happy with SimpleSat since we switched. So dashboards for managing relationships. I mentioned earlier, we've got some co-managed clients that really like the dashboard view. And we've also got some clients that just like to stay a little bit more on top of their services. So the goal is to, give them a real-time look into what we're doing for them. It kind of helps us with stickiness. It kind of helps us with, hey, what have you done for me lately? I haven't had to call you. So those kind of situations. So these dashboards would be filtered per client, and we don't have adoption across our entire client base. But we've got, a handful of them that like these and that utilize them as well. And it also gave us the opportunity to stop answering questions every month. Like, hey, I'm billed by device and my device count went up by 2. What was it? So like for that example specifically, there's in the bottom left a Windows device adds removed gauge that we'll go through and list, with either an up arrow or a down arrow, whether it was an increase or a decrease in the count. The first gauge service team, we had dedicated service teams assigned to specific sets of clients. So we put their, employee photo and their name next to them so that clients could put a little bit of a face with a name and those kind of things. So I'm just trying to add some, some stickiness to the relationship. So Windows devices is pretty self-explanatory. That's pulled from our RMM. That's workstation servers, those kind of things that are Windows that we have agents on. Devices without AV installed, tickets open last quarter, CSAT current quarter. I'm not going to go deeply into all these gauges because 1, they're pretty self-explanatory, and 2, they're pretty similar to some of the other gauges we've highlighted. Unmanaged AD devices, we try to be as blanketing on our client networks as we can. We don't like to pick and choose what devices we can and can't have services on. But sometimes there's a vendor server or a vendor provided server or something like that we're not allowed to have access to for the vendor's request. So in those situations, we do still try to count those. Networks with DNS protection, this pulls from our DNS filtering application. We use WebTitan DNS filtering right now. And this is just saying any network you have protection on. This would work with, we did it with Cisco Umbrella before that. So SLA review last 90 days just gives the clients a glimpse into, have you had any breach tickets lately? This was kind of a hotly debated gauge to build with our management team because there was a bit of a stance of, do we want to highlight our errors? And transparency kind of won out, and we want to, at least own our mistakes to our clients. So that has been important to me, to us. CSAT response required. We respond to any non-positive survey. So whether it's a neutral or a negative, they get a phone call from a supervisor or a manager, not to argue, but just to ask what went wrong. What do you want us to do different next time? How can we help better? Those kind of things. RMM devices not in AD. This gauge, I won't go real far into it. It took some magic to get working, but it's essentially, do we have agents on devices that aren't in Active Directory for that particular client? Devices missing patches is self-explanatory. Average response time, this is measured in hours. This particular example is pretty good. We don't always meet that by any means, but just so the clients know about how long on average they have to wait for a response. Backup enrolled devices is how many devices we would back up. And then devices not backed up in last 24 hours, I believe, is the next gauge. And then automated backup tests. So I'll mention about this one a little bit. We've got some processes that run in the background that will essentially take a most recent backup file. We use StorageCraft SPX for most clients, and take the most recent backup file, mount it, and then output that results to confirm the validity of the backup. We don't have a lot of issues with StorageCraft. In the past, we've used some different backup products where, everybody dreads that backup successful. Was it actually successful, or was it a false success or something like that? So we like to mount the backups in order to do that. So,
Josh, I have 2 questions for you. Can you give more detail on the Windows device add remove? Is that out of Automate? And are there specific fields that you're using for that?
Yeah, I'll let Harrison add that. We use SolarWinds and Central as our RMM as opposed to Automate. And there are some built-in reports in Report Manager for Central that pull that data. Harrison, is that where we're pulling that?
Yeah, so that comes from in Central, and on the database backend, they track when a device starts and ends management. So within a given time frame, I can see that the device has ended management. So, it'd be a removal, and I can see that it's started management without a removal date. And that's where you get your ads from.
And then the second question was, can you share your SLA goal?
One more time. Sorry, I was trying to talk over you.
Sorry. The second question was, can you share what your SLA goals are?
Yeah, so we have different SLAs per the agreements are usually the same, but there's different options depending on severity and different criteria for the issue. But we do basically a high urgent and emergency SLA, and we do a 1 hour response on emergency, a 4 hour on urgent, and then a 8 hour on high. And that's response time. We don't measure resolution time because a lot of that's out of our control very often. But we at least measure when we're working on when we'll start working an issue. So, and those are the contractually obligated maximums. We try to be far under that for emergencies and things like that. It's basically the next time somebody gets off the phone. So. All right. The next dashboard it's pretty similar, so I won't go over to all of them. This is just another example of a client-facing dashboard. Usually, a client principal or a key contact would have access to something like this. And again, it's just for them to keep kind of an up-to-date, real-time view of what we're doing for them and what the status of our services are. It's pretty much the same. We will customize. We have kind of a baseline of gauges that we put on these by default. And then as we have meetings or conversations or calls or requests from clients, we will add or remove gauges based on what they want. So for example, I have one client who doesn't want to see any project data on their main client dashboard. And I have another client that wants a very detailed breakdown of hours and who's the manager and all those things on projects in ConnectWise. So it just kind of varies by client. Tickets open by status, workstations never backed up, devices with AV disabled. That was an important one for us. Sometimes, you disable AV for troubleshooting, should be remembering to turn it back on. This is to help make sure that nothing gets overlooked. Virus detection last, I think that's 30 days. Device is missing AV. Again, these are all things that just might be red flags to our clients. So backup storage details, that was something, this is probably for a larger client for us. They've got 4 NAS network attached storage devices that we would send our local backups to. So this just kind of shows the percent free. It's good for us to be able to track it in one place. It's good for the clients to be able to see too. So when we come back to them and say, hey, your NAS is about to fill up, you need to add another one, we've got some solid data to point them to. And then the managed device change current month is the same as it was on the previous dashboard. And then the managed devices on the right is the workstations and servers that we had agents on for that particular client. The last one in this set is for managing relationships is the client manager dashboard. So client manager or account manager, TAM, whatever you may call your for us, it's kind of a quasi sales service role. It's essentially the person in our organization who has ultimate responsibility to a specific set of clients, whether that be a service need or a sales need or a project need. These are the people who are ultimately responsible for all that, for overseeing that and coordinating everything. So our client managers have a target set of MRR that they manage. That's the MRR made up from their client set. And then the number of managed clients that they have under their management. We try to, we usually measure that more by MRR than by client count. Because larger clients are obviously could be a lot more work than smaller clients. So comparing quantity is not really an apples to apples scenario. Open opportunities, MRR. Our account managers are farmers, so they're not out seeking new business, but they will on occasion, recommend upsell services or additional services or something like that. so they can go into their quoting tool, which will ultimately create a ConnectWise opportunity, so that they can track what their MRR growth potential is compared to what's open. And then open opportunities, non-MRR, is really just hardware, software, project sales, those kind of things that aren't recurring, that they have open opportunities for, that they're waiting on quote approval and that kind of stuff. Managed endpoints is how many devices they manage per our RMM for their client set. SBRs completed this quarter. This is one of our big pushes. We tried to meet with every client quarterly to have kind of a proactive, discussion, planning, budgeting kind of meeting. We call them strategic business reviews. Some call them quarterly business reviews, whatever you call them. But we have them input that into ConnectWise as an activity, and then we can pull activity data per client manager that have a specific type into this gauge, so that they know, this particular example, they've got 28 clients and they're sitting at 0 in this example board. So they've got a lot of work to do between now and the end of the quarter to make sure that they get them all taken care of. Open opportunities revenue, sales orders invoiced in the current quarter, helps them keep track of their sales. And then the sales one assigned, sales one is our service board for the sales team. So those are just ticket statuses that get pulled. And then CM, the CM prefix on the bottom 3 rows, that's client manager points. They have a little bit of a similar incentive program to our techs, where they've got certain activities that are in points and they have a target goal for the quarter. So that's just a month, week, and quarter to date view of those.
Josh, a few questions for you. This kind of goes back a little bit, but the backup data from StorageCraft, is that going StorageCraft into ConnectWise, or is that RMM?
So Harrison, I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that comes from Shadow Control. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the Shadow Control API into an SQL database that goes up to BrightGauge.
Okay.
And we'll get more into that scenario here in just a couple minutes on the Sentinel-1. So,
The next question I have here, do you have any managed clients that pay their entire agreement amount up front? And if so, how do you reflect that in the MRR number?
yeah, that's a good question. We have only had that happen. We have one client that does that. The way that we reflect that on that MRR number is we actually pull that number, because it varies and changes a little bit each month. We pull it from the last, whatever X amount of days of invoices that have an agreement, that have a agreement invoice type. So rather than having a list somewhere with the client so that we manually update, or that's calculated using the RMN, we just go off the previous managed invoice amount.
Awesome, thank you.
So the next 3 gauges, I know I don't have a ton of time. I'll run through a little bit. They should be pretty self-explanatory for the most part. These are our internal facing boards that our various teams or techs or team leads will use. I'll highlight the most important ones here. Service management, blue. Blue is one of our team designations. We have a blue and a green, so it doesn't really matter. New tickets breaching SLA in 60 minutes is what the rest of that gauge says. This is the most used gauge, I would say, in this building. We've got them on overhead TVs in our service room, and each manager has some of that access, or has access to these gauges. So at any one time, if there's a ticket about to breach, there's a lot of eyes on that issue to make sure that it gets addressed. So sales item ordered. This gauge actually then says sales item ordered older than 10 days. And it's to help us keep an eye on back orders and orders that aren't being fulfilled for any various reason. Sales item received is the hardware's here. So that's we treat that as a new status in ConnectWise. And so our techs know when they see something in that status, it's work that needs assigned. CSAT follow-ups, we talked about that one earlier. That's just a non-positive CSAT response that needs a call from a manager. Tickets by board. Our teams do have multiple boards they manage. Some of our clients have their own service board. And then we have service boards for various reasons. So this is just to show that breakdown. And then all the other ones on this section are kind of open tickets by tech, how many tickets that closed, how many tickets that have their stale. So those are all just kind of pretty generic ticket statistics. And then the bottom right gauge is admin hours current week. So our techs have a target goal for how many admin hours or fewer they should have each pay period or each week. So this is our way to kind of give a real-time snapshot of that. We would expect this to go up a little bit if it's a slow time, or to be dramatically better when it's really busy. So the next two slides are the same dashboard. It's we created when we went remote, like many people early last year. We had some concerns. Some in our organization had some concerns about, will we be able to maintain productivity? Will our clients suffer? Will our workload increase or decrease? There are just a lot of unknowns for everybody. So we created a few gauges just to kind of highlight some things. We didn't have any layoffs or headcount reductions or anything like that. But we did watch overtime closely. We were fortunate during the pandemic that we didn't have a lot of adverse effects because we operate largely in healthcare. But we still wanted to be able to track this to have a better safe and sorry scenario. So we created a few gauges to track overtime by hours by tech each week, and then how many tickets were being opened and closed. And this was kind of beneficial too in the beginning and the early spring or late winter in 2020, because we could see, a spike in March of tickets, and that was everybody going to work from home and they needed SSL VPN clients set up and those kind of things. So it was interesting to see how that data evolved. And then this is just a few extra gauges on that same board. Hours entered by tech, hours this week by tech, and then the bottom gauge is ticket tracking on basically our 8 biggest clients. And the gauge looks like a little bit of a mess because I have everybody on in this filtered example. But you can turn the filters off and only see one at a time. But we just did this to see if our largest client set, which many are hospitals, to see how their entered tickets have increased or decreased based on the pandemic and the restrictions and everything else. So the last section to go over is to talk about custom data. I will say that when we are vetting and reviewing products, one of the things we definitely like to do is we always ask if a product that we're going to use has an open API. We're fortunate. I know not all MSPs are. We didn't for a lot of years have someone with a development background that can utilize those APIs, but Harrison has that ability and we've done a lot of work with it. So typically if a piece of software has an open API, he can connect to it, pull the data down, dump it into a recording database that we use that's here. And then we have that SQL server as a data source in BrightGauge. So that kind of gives us the ability to pull in any data, even if it's a product that BrightGauge doesn't happen to have an active integration with. So it's been very useful for us. We use it for things like monthly reports and then also for dashboards. So this example is Sentinel-1. We had been on this product for a couple of years now, and there was, I don't believe at the time, I'm not sure now, that there was any integration with BrightGauge. So this is just kind of a snapshot view of different stats: unresolved threats, out-of-date agents, agents in default group. We try to keep everything under a client rather than our default group. Applications at risk are things that Sentinel-1 is flagged as, hey, you need to, this application might need a patch or an update, that kind of stuff. Agents pending activities, that could probably say agents pending reboot, and it would be the same exact number. But that's basically what that means. And then last active more than 30 days ago, 2,300 is a really high number to have. This was probably taken, we did a license migration recently between Sentinel-1 CSPs, and this was probably during that migration. So Harrison, do you have anything you want to add about the customized data?
I mean, I can just say that most everything we do custom is done via the the tools API down to an SQL database, and then from there up into Brightgauge. We don't really do it any other way, but I do know that you can, same way from the API, pull down into like a CSV file that you dump into Dropbox and use the Brightgauge integration there. If your SQL isn't, or if the SQL skill set isn't available to you, or something like that. But this shadow control, WebTight, any of those are going to be API based into an SQL database.
Okay. I think that was what we had. I'm happy to answer any questions. Ashley, if you've got anything else for us.
Yeah, so we've definitely been answering them as we go. But at this point, I will say if anyone has any remaining questions, we do have a few minutes left that we can talk about. It looks like a lot of people are really interested in your dashboards, and looks like we're going to get lots of requests for recreating. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'll leave this open for just a little bit. Yeah, we got some nice work. How can we recreate that? And just to mention, I have been writing individually, but for any gauge or dashboard specifically that you're interested in, if you reach out to success@brightgauge.com, we will work with you to get that recreated in your own account. We will have a template available likely in the beginning of next month. The template will be inspired by today's webinar, meaning we'll definitely pull some metrics on there, but it won't be all inclusive. So if there's something specific you're looking for, reach out to us. Okay. How did you correctly measure the storage space on NAS units?
Harrison, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, so that's actually reporting from Shadow Control. We use Image Manager. Image Manager, when you do manage folders in it, provides space information. Shadow Control provides that information in their reporting API. So from there, it's just, the math of calculating free space.
Okay. How many data sources are you pulling into Brightgauge?
I believe we have 4 active data sources right now. I know we use ConnectWise and Central. We recently added QuickBooks, and we then the custom the local SQL database that Harrison manages.
Okay, thank you. And can you talk a little bit about your incentive program for the techs?
Yeah, sure. Something we started a few years ago, basically to incentivize what we would consider above and beyond performance. So things like, well, usually above and beyond is good. So things like CSAT, we incent people if they're over, 96%, and then 97, 98, 99 in kind of an increasing tier style. And then there's some other items that we really just pick things that we've had pain points with and added that as an incentive metric. So some in our organization thought, why are we incentivizing people doing their job? But my opinion was, if we can just incentivize this for a few months, it should become a habit to them, and then they'll get in the habit of doing it. So things like, did they submit their timesheets on time? That metric was added because we were perpetually late with timesheets. And to the point where we started incentivizing on it, and people then realized, oh, I'm getting, what they would say punished if I don't have my timesheet on time. So we basically have a tier structure, and there's a quantity of dollars and points available to them every 6 months. We do semi-annual for our techs, and they get a percentage of this total pot based on their performance, and usually somewhere between 4 and 6 different metrics that we will rotate through.
I'll just add that the tech metrics are all items that they can control. We don't currently do any team-based incentive metrics for the individual techs. So they are the masters of their own incentive dollars.
And I'm going to ask one last question here just because we are at time. And if you do have any unanswered questions, again, reach out to us. We're happy to get those from Josh and Harrison post webinar. So, the last question here: how are you able to capture recurring revenue from ConnectWise?
Yeah. So in ConnectWise, we have our agreement set up, and those agreements invoice monthly. And we look at, I think the gauge says something like invoice created last 30 days. We usually invoice around the last week of the month. So this just looks at a client set, looks at that client set's list of invoices, and then presents that dollar amount. Harrison, do you want to add any more about the way that's calculated or pulled?
Yeah, that should be correct. It's the invoice amount with the managed services agreement type.
All right, awesome. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. This has been a really valuable session for me and hopefully for everyone tuning in. As a reminder, you will get a recording, which will be sent out within the next couple of business days. So you can go back, review some of these dashboards. And anyone that's interested in recreating, of course, can reach out to us. And, kudos to Josh and Harrison getting lots of great job, well done, nice work, all of that good stuff in the comments. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Ashley.
Bye, guys.